Woohoo! Good luck.
Okay, we're live?
Not quite.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think. I was just saying good luck. Woohoos.
No, oh yeah, there we go. I think we are live. Okay, hello everyone. As we're live, welcome to AMA number 54. We have Arthur Brock, hey Art, and Mary Camacho, hey Mary. And we are without Eric Harris-Braun. He was going to be on, but we figured everyone else could cover the questions, and he's working to an exciting deadline. I think is that what we're calling it? Okay, and we are in the other introduction. We're going to have a Holochain development AMA coming up soon, focusing on developer training, hApps people are building, and other Holochain specific questions. So in this AMA, we're going to focus less on the Holochain 0.2.x release and less on developers, and pick up a series of questions on Holo, Holofuel, Holoports, recent events and other things going on in the industry. So it should be a good one. We've got a lot of questions as always. I think there's 35 or something around that. So we will attempt to go through as many as possible. Okay. And exciting times. Anyway, I will keep my excitement and just crank through the questions. All right, congratulations. Question number one, congratulations on the Holochain beta 0.2, or more than 100 questions, my goodness. Okay, there were more than 100 questions that got synthesized to 30 to 35. And yeah, so question one, congratulations on Holochain beta 0.2.0. Please clarify the situation once more if HOT will be listed on exchanges before the beta of Holo, not before the beta of Holochain, which had already happened. These two are different. You explained before, but the difference needs to be clarified once more for those who still don't fully understand. Art, can you help clarify this one?
Yeah, clarify a few different things. First of all, HOT already is listed on many exchanges around the world, but exchanges in the US need for the Holo hosting network to be operational in order to list it. Since HOT is a currency that fuels that network, or Holo fuel is actually the currency that fuels that network, but HOT is the ERC20 token placeholder for it. And the problem is that if exchanges in the US at least list it before it's operational, then they risk being attacked by the SEC basically for listing unregistered securities. This recently happened with Bittrex, which then led to them shutting down their US exchange and then actually filing bankruptcy because of the SEC chasing them for a handful of coins that were listed. And this is, a standard problem that I think a lot of people don't understand when they're asking us to talk about HOT and Holofuel and answer questions and stuff, that the SEC has rather ambiguous guidelines. They don't define things very clearly, so they don't make it easy for projects and exchanges to manage their risk. And it makes a difference how the currencies are talked about. And so we are being very conservative about how we talk about these things, which makes it not possible to answer questions sometimes in the way that they're framed by people. But again, HOT and Holofuel, they power the Holo hosting network. They don't power Holochain. So that's the difference that's being talked about. Holochain does not have a native currency. Holochain Foundation owns a subsidiary, which is the Holo Ltd, and that's actually a hosting company that bridges Holochain apps to web users that haven't installed Holochain. So it allows us to reach mainstream users in ways that blockchains struggle with. So just to be clear, the Holochain beta lets developers build stable apps, and it's the Holo beta that actually launches the hosting network, which those are currencies of, which could then allow for the possibility of those being on US exchanges.
Super, thank you. Okay, and then one on to a few questions on HoloFuel, but specifically around exchanges. When will, oh, sorry, Mary, you wanted to say something? Okay. When will HoloFuel be released, and when will it be available on exchanges?
I'll just take this one, if that's
Okay.
all right. So HoloFuel is going to go live when the Holo hosting network gets to beta. So it doesn't have anything to do with hot being on exchanges. And it's not going to be on exchanges until till there's a period of after our swap window that it's not even really going to be available to be on exchanges. And during that window, when we first go live to beta, that's when we're doing our one-to-one swap, which we're doing on our reserve accounts. So that's the difference is we don't want to confuse having HoloFuel out on exchanges right when we go live. That has to happen after the period of time after we've offered the one-to-one swap that we talked about in our green paper all the way back at the beginning of our design of this network. So
Okay, super. And what's the ratio going to be again for the conversion of hot to HoloFuel in that period?
One hot, one HoloFuel.
Okay, super. Yep, we've been talking about that for many times, but thank you again, whoever asked that question. Okay, so this is someone referencing a Medium article about what the HoloFuel transaction fees will be used for. And can you clarify here, Mary, what the fees will be used for?
Oh, sure. Well, the fees are really just Holo's revenue. And so these are going to be used for all of Holo's operating expenses. It'll pay for continued product development work so that we can continue upgrading and offering better and more services to the users of the network. This is primarily the people who are managing the apps that require hosting. So more and more developer tools, more testing options and things like that. These fees are also used to pay for all the centralized services, because remember, Holo is connecting peer-to-peer Holochain applications to the centralized internet. In order to do that, you have to actually pay for centralized services and pretty much do that matching and routing to the DNS and all of those things. So the fees are used for a lot of things. One of the other big important parts of it is that they pay for all the costs related to regulated services of operating the reserve accounts. And as you heard Arthur saying, there's a lot of intricacies when it comes to this in terms of all the different jurisdictions and all the requirements. So there's some there's some expense there, but essentially this is all Holo's revenue to pay for operating the company. And then after that, anything beyond that is actually paying for continued development, continued work on Holochain, the protocol, basically the peer-to-peer work. And so it's going into the foundation because Holochain owns the Holo hosting company.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we're maybe a tiny bit apologetic around the HoloFuel. It sounds a little bit around the HoloFuel fees, but there's quite a lot of work that's going to go. It sounds like, well, because we generally, actually, I'm not sure here though, but the fee has always been 1% of transactions. And there's a lot of ongoing work there's a lot of ongoing work in maintaining the network for a 1% transaction fee. So I think it's when we look at the kind of fees that we pay in other services, I think it's a very bold and exciting initiative. But yeah, I think sometimes it sounds like we're apologizing for charging a fee that's like a fraction of what other centralized services and others might be charging.
Which is a good segue into your next question.
Exactly. Which is, why can't we just, this has been a long, why can't we just use fiat currency to buy Holo hosting power? And that's probably one. And then the second part of it is, will HoloFuel only be useful to buy Holo hosting services?
I want to jump in on that. And I also want to piggyback on the thing that you were saying. I agree that we should not be apologetic for having a revenue model. I think that there are a bunch of crypto projects that I think somewhat irresponsibly only created a capitalization model like selling of tokens and did not create revenue models, which means they're not really building for ongoing operational stability. And we are.
Well, or they're reaching out and only having financialized aspects of those tokens to be the only way that they can create that, which is it's well understood, but it's not necessarily one that constitutes building something that's providing an ongoing value, produced into the world. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish with this project.
Yeah. So back to the question, why can't we just use fiat for powering the hosting network? And one aspect of that is because the transaction fees on billions of daily microtransactions that it actually takes to have all these hosts be providing services would kill it. Like, it would be way too expensive and way too slow. Think of how long it takes for transactions to clear your bank, where we need to know very quickly whether, hosts need to know whether they're getting paid or not, if they want to keep providing hosting services and that kind of thing. But also, most of the APIs for this aren't even to the existing financial infrastructure, to fiat currencies, national currencies, aren't scalable enough. We're talking about things that are usage volumes that we expect to exceed the Visa network and things like that. So there aren't centralized banking infrastructure that can handle this kind of thing. And then will HoloFuel only be used to buy Holo hosting services? That's what it's optimized for. You can build other currencies on top of Holochain, but I think the thing that happens is when you have a currency that becomes backed by hosting power, it starts having a real value proposition and starts getting used by many things in the Holochain ecosystem because it's valuable. It has inherent value in it. And that's also why we have been supporting other projects, like supported by with currencies backed by energy or food or other real tangible things, real tangible items of value and human needs. And so we expect, and there's another question later, so I don't want to say too much about it now, but we do expect HoloFuel to be used by a bunch of applications, not only the Holo hosting network.
Thanks, Art. And yeah, for whoever asked this question, if you're jumping in, I recommend checking out the MetaCurrency project and learning about currency constellations. And there's so much more thinking that's gone into HoloFuel and other currencies that Art and other people in the ecosystem have been designing over the last couple of decades. It's a really eye-opening experience. There's also, I think Art has a Udemy course around currency design that is really worthwhile checking out. And when you start to play around that, I think like a lot of people on this AMA or coming from the blockchain ecosystem would be thinking about Ethereum style tokens and having a single kind of that influencing their perspective on decentralized currencies. And so checking out some of the HoloFuel literature and MetaCurrency literature, I think, is an amazing thing to do for anybody who's interested in digital assets and decentralized currencies, because it just enables you to step and broaden your thinking and see Ethereum and other tokens as a small subset of what's going to be possible in the future. All right, that was great stuff on HoloFuel. Now let's go to Holohot, Holoports, and Holo Beta. Roadmap time. Mary, what's the roadmap for 2023? I mean, the rest of 2023. Can you walk through exactly what needs to be done before we reach Holo Beta and how long it will take? Are there any technological advancements or big problems that have to be solved in order to achieve Holo Beta, or is it just a matter of like hard work, hard grind? Thanks so much. Okay.
All right, so I'm just basically going to go look at the roadmap and kind of walk through some of the pieces of this. And I think we've got the roadmap link that somebody can put out there, or we can push it up on the screen or something. We've been steadily working through the milestones for Holo, and we've sometimes gotten a little bit slower, sometimes gone a little faster. Recently, we've completed a whole bunch of different milestones, and it's been more that we've been working on how do we get them out into the right level of beta, how do we get our release processes, how do we get our infrastructure for automation really tuned for what it needs to be. There have been some significant improvements in Holochain over the last couple of months, as you might have heard of with the beta release. And some of those have solved some problems, but we actually have some distinct needs in Holo than a lot of the other apps. So we're actually testing it in a much more scaled way, and finding some issues here and there. And that's been, so when Holochain went to beta 1, we found a few things that we needed. And so we've been waiting for 0.2, which we've now updated everything to. And we're getting ready to release into our alpha network. And we'll talk about a lot of the implications of that and a few of the other questions that came up a little bit later. But what we're working on right now is getting out into the alpha network, all these things that have been completed already. And this includes updates to hApp management. That was part of what our publisher alpha milestone was a while back. We've got all of the hosting payments that has been being tested. This means the generation of invoices, the service logs that are created for them, the automatic payment of those invoices in the full distributed network way. Those are underway and they're in our QA environment. We just haven't pushed them into the alpha environment at this stage. Where our devs are working, go ahead, Arthur.
Just a note, since the screen just got shared, the filled in circles mean they're complete. And so you can all the way up to the in progress thing.
Right.
Go ahead.
Great. So where we are right now fully is that we've done about half of this milestone right here for the hot Holo Fuel Reserve. This is getting all of the reserve infrastructure in place so that we can be doing the hot Holo Fuel swap, so that we can be doing the ongoing hot Holo Fuel redemptions back for hosts as well. And then we're also working on this thing called source chain persistence. So David, part of the question you asked were there any big, what was the way it was worded?
It was basically, is there anything around like technical blockers or big advancements? Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I would say that there were big problems to be solved over the past 6 months, but a lot of those have been architected and resolved. And now a couple of them are waiting for certain things to be completed by the Holochain team to be able to support the implementation that Holo is going to be doing. So at this stage, I'd say that we're pretty close to saying the big issues have been solved, and now it is working and getting it complete and getting it into that basically release candidate that has all the requirements that we need to be in for beta. But then, as we've discussed many, many times before, after that, we have security reviews, we have scalability testing. There's some significant things that have to be done to ensure security at the infrastructure layers. And we're working with third parties to do a lot of that. So those are the pieces that will take a little bit of time after we even get to those release candidates. But I'd say we're in really good shape right now, and we're really getting ourselves geared up to be able to release a lot of this work in the coming months.
Super. Okay. Is HoloFuel a DNA solution that can be used and integrated by any app? If so, how would this work and what would the feature set look like? And if not, what is the reasoning behind it?
So just to clarify some of the language there, a DNA solution means like the DNA is what we call the code of Holochain apps. So is HoloFuel an app essentially that can be used by other apps, and how would that work? So as I mentioned earlier, we do expect that many apps would want to integrate or accept HoloFuel. They'd have different reasons for doing this. Like some might use it for fee payments within their app. Some might use it just for fundamental things like signing up, like a subscription, or maybe even staking upon joining to reduce Sybils or things like that, where you don't need anything other than Holochain. You don't, you can stay in Holochain land and not have to connect to centralized banking APIs and such. So that would be some of the reasons for doing it. Also, HoloFuel has some lightweight KYC happening. Sometimes people may want to piggyback on that, again, maybe for civil protection. But one of the things is it's going to be one of the first currencies running in the Holochain ecosystem. So if you want to stay within the Holochain ecosystem for your app, then there's pretty good reason to use it. The fees, the 1% fee that we're charging is much less than the fees that banks charge for doing credit card transactions and payments and that kind of thing. So there shouldn't be many barriers to use.
Cool, thanks, Art. Okay. Explain the Holo software for someone who's a small business owner. How can I make use of such tech and any hApps?
So I feel like, again, there's maybe a couple questions bundled in there. There may be confusion about the difference between Holochain and Holo, because that you might want to use Holochain apps, either ones that exist because you want to piggyback on, I don't know, chat or, social media or Wikipedia type tools or whatever that might exist, knowledge-based tools that might exist. Or you might want to be building something for your own business, build your own business with this as part of your business model. And sometimes people are confused about both open source business models, which it wouldn't necessarily have to be, your app wouldn't necessarily have to be open source, but it's playing in an open source ecosystem. And also with sort of Web3 business models that aren't just about DeFi, that aren't just tokenized. And so I think part of what we're going to see is also a bunch of innovation around applying business models in this space. There's some tools that we're even putting out, we not being Holochain, we being me inside project land, putting out things like a name registry and rival risk data management for managing basically lightweight consensus for your app and things like that, to try to make it simple for app developers to be able to have some revenue models, like they can charge for names in their app. So for example, Musefeed, which is another project, a Twitter type clone happening outside of Holochain, but that I'm involved in bringing in to the world. The business model for that is to charge for username registration, charge for names. And the name registry is going to be the entity that collects those payments, and then Musefeed just gets a check each month. So there are a number of different ways that you could set up business models, and we're actually trying to do some examples not only of the software, but of different business models for executing the software, so that people can see some ways that they can approach this stuff. And then I also want to add that not only do you have the ability to do these kind of Holochain apps that come inherently with kind of free infrastructure that scales with your user base because users are self-hosting, but with the Holo hosting network, you can bridge these sort of Web3 next-gen crypto apps to mainstream web users without them even really realizing that's what they're doing. And there's some very unique kinds of things that come with Holochain, like asynchronous, offline, local first kind of functionality for your app. If you're building like a Slack clone and you want to be able to get on the airplane and be disconnected from the internet and still pull up messages and respond to them online, and you're offline, but have them synchronize when you get back online, things like that you can do on Holochain and you simply can't do on blockchain type systems and many centralized systems unless they've made a local client. And Holochain kind of already natively combines those two things. So there's a lot of use cases that I think justify the value of building on Holochain, including performance, scalability, real-time stuff but those are things that I think you sometimes have to witness to believe are possible in a decentralized system.
Awesome, thanks, Art. I just want to sneak a quick one in here. Someone just asked, we had a couple of Holofuel questions, and someone popped in and asked if the Holofuel app can be forked or is it unforkable? So that's a great little question, Art, if you want to just let us know.
We are not initially releasing the source code for Holofuel as an open source thing. We actually have some agreements with other people, like under NDA, where we're giving some people access to it. But we think that the validation module, the security model of Holofuel, is very targeted to Holo's application of doing high volumes of small transactions. And we don't want the same kind of thing that happened in the Bitcoin space, where people basically just fork Bitcoin and make a proliferation of other coins without really understanding what they're copying and whether or not it's the right data validation model. Realize again, Holofuel does not have consensus. It's not managing global consensus. So it's an eventually consistent model with strong data validation guarantees, but you actually need to make sure that you have set up that validation model correctly. And so what we want is to have multiple types of examples in the ecosystem before we were to do something like open up the Holofuel code base, so people don't make the mistake of just forking it thinking that's the right way to do things.
Super, thank you. I'm so glad. Thanks, a great question.
Yeah, really appreciate that question.
Yep. Mary, how's Holo doing financially?
We're in good shape. I mean, even with the price depression that we're seeing across all of crypto these days, which has hit us along with all the other projects, we've still got our treasury's still fine. We're managing, we've got runway that's going out multiple years, and but we're really intent on kind of picking up and focusing on launching at all levels right now, because right now it matters more about the upcoming time frame of getting to market. And I think there's a couple of really great questions that came into this AMA about this, about what are we doing and when are we coming out with these things. And I know we are hesitant to give you guys dates. That's just been more coming from our development perspective. But as we've started with Holochain and how we'll be going with Holo, we'll be doing more and more of that as the months go by now. It's really critical that we just get these things out into the marketplace, because there's demand. We're having people asking us, what is our approach? How are we going to solve this problem? How can we start using it now? And this is what we need to be out there for. So yes, we have runway, and yes, we're in a hurry to get everything out.
Super, thank you. Okay, so someone wants to know about switching on Holoports in order to get software updates and get included in the alpha program, and more broadly about the alpha program. So is it better to have my Holoport switched on, or or switch it on every now and again, or leave it on constantly?
So I'll answer this one. The thing is we've got this thing called the Holoport Alpha program. And I think if we don't have the other, I think there's a couple of other questions about it, so hopefully those will come in the next sequence. If you're in the Holoport Alpha program right now, leave your Holoport on. We're using it. We need it. We keep moving Holoports from one network to another network for the Holo developers. We have QA networks, we have dev networks, we have alpha networks, all of those, and we're using these Holoports for all of that testing. It's actually really important to us, and it might not always be visible, and sometimes you can't even tell that because you might have been moved to a dev network, so you might even not be able to log in sometimes to the Holoport. It still may be being used by some of our developers for certain purposes on scale testing and things like that. So just want to say, if you're in the Holoport Alpha program, leave it on. That's super important. If you're not in the Holoport Alpha program right now, you probably don't need to leave it on. It's not doing us any good. We're not using it without your permission, and if it's not meeting the requirements of that program. But that's the baseline right now. The updates on it are auto updates. You shouldn't have to turn it off and turn it on to have any auto updates come. It's checking every 10 minutes or so for updates that get pushed out to the Holoports when they're on the network. That's the basics to that question. I think the rest are in the next one.
Okay, yeah. So when will the alpha program reopen?
Actually, I'm noticing that I'm hearing a gap that we're assuming that people know what the alpha program is. And I just want to say briefly, the alpha program is where we pay you to run your Holoport, even though we haven't launched the beta network yet. We pay you in accruing Holofuel that is a balance you'll be paid when Holofuel is launched. But the reason for that is because we have to be doing a whole lot of testing, dev testing, launch testing, app testing of apps that are hosted, scalability testing. And it's actually expensive for us to pay, for example, Amazon or some other cloud provider for us to do that. And we would much rather be paying you and be using our existing infrastructure of devices that we've sold. So the alpha program is one where if you're registered, we need your devices to be on because we're using them as test infrastructure for the things we're building. And that's why we're paying for that in the form of accumulated credits. So when will it reopen? We actually been working to reopen that over the last month or two and expect to be opening that very soon for a limited number of seats, about another 300 seats or so, because of more scaling required that we need. And then shortly before or around the time of our launch of a beta release candidate, which we do expect
our network release candidate
this year. Yeah, our Holo beta network release candidate, right? Or you don't like me using the word beta because you think it confuses it is the testing system we need for the security auditors to be able to actually audit Holo and everything. So we will be adding more to the beta program at that phase, alpha program at that phase, because we want to get all the Holoports basically online so that they're all online before launch, right? And that they're not just sitting idle in a closet. And we're going to need even heavier testing and scalability testing at that time. So both
Can I do the TLDR on that?
Yeah.
Great. We've got Holoport Alpha program, which is us paying hosts to use their infrastructure live right now. We just moved into our Alpha network the code necessary to reopen the Holoport Alpha program, which we're preparing to do operationally in the coming weeks. And we're going to be allowing 300 more, approximately 300 more Holoport to join the Holoport Alpha program. When we get to our network release candidate with all the required functionality such that we can go into all of the testing and security reviews, we will be opening up the Holoport Alpha program again, and we will be inviting everybody out there with a Holoport to join at that point.
And then I just want to say, watch for updates on the Holo forum, forum.holo.host, for making sure that you're included.
Cool. David, I see some other cool questions coming in on the side. Can we just throw some of those into the mix right now?
Yeah, okay. So there's one, Mary, you're going to blockchain battle block 3000 in July. Is that correct?
I am. I know it's a strange name for the conference, but it's in Lisbon, Portugal. And one of the cool things I understand about it is that it does a good job of really doing educational understanding of the various projects. And I'm super excited because the next couple of events that I'm going to in June and July, actually, there's whole bunch of them right now, but one of them is in Berlin. It's the Web3 Berlin, and the other one is this the one in Portugal, the Block 3000. I'll be talking a lot about how Holochain is, how it works in conjunction with EVMs, other blockchains, in particular Ethereum style blockchains, and the kinds of benefits that you can get from those interactions. So I'm super excited about going out and really exploring that with people in real life.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool work there. It's exciting. Okay, yes, and Matt Schutte has joined. I think we talked about this at the last AMA. That he's yes, he's heading up.
People are excited about Matt Schutte. Let's be excited with them.
Exactly.
Yay, Matt!
I know, it's amazing having Matt back, and he's in heading up business development and networking his way through the world and bringing Holochain to the awareness of people in all sorts of unexplored places. Very, very exciting. All right. Okay, I'm conscious of time. We've got some great questions. Let's just rattle through. What does Binance's exit from Canada mean for hot holders, Mary?
Well, every different jurisdictions have some struggles in terms of how the various holders of tokens can or can't, have difficulties accessing exchanges. Obviously, anytime an exchange leaves the jurisdiction, it's tough for the folks who are in that jurisdiction, and they've got to find some alternates. DeFi alternatives still exist that people can use for trading and exchanging. And sometimes there's other exchanges out there. But I want to speak a little bit more to the broader implications about this. And the thing is, Holo, and all of the potential regulatory things that Holo is going to be dealing with, we're quite different than an exchange who is running a custodial business. That means, somebody is holding your funds on your behalf in a wallet that they really can manage the ins and outs of at some level. So we're not like that, and we aren't necessarily affected by changes in the legislation in quite the same way. Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't, and it's just different nuances. So, we continue to evaluate all the different changes in the jurisdictions that are going to affect users of our services. Again, as Arthur pointed to earlier, once Holo is actively supporting hosting services marketplace, that means when Holo hosting is up and running, purchasing of Holo Fuel should be really guided more by commercial law, because you're purchasing something that has a use value. It's not simply a prospective value for an investment. So that's a very different thing. And this is why we haven't made it onto some of the exchanges in the United States, as Arthur was pointing to before, because they really need to understand the functional use, the token, what it does, what it means, where it is, how it's talked about, what promises there are around it. And when they can see it in action, that answers the question more than anything else.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, what kind of security will a Holo wallet / Holo Fuel have? We've seen the latest about Ledger having the option to shard out private keys, Uniswap permit to hack, and countless other phishing hacking attacks. Is any of this possible here? Thank you.
Well, first, there's the underlying Holochain security, where we basically have everything at rest and over the wire encrypted, which makes it difficult for local malware to do much. It can't really search for keys in your file system and all that kind of stuff because it's all encrypted. The all calls to Holochain actually have to be signed by keys. So makes it also hard for you to accidentally, install software that can make calls and everything, because it won't have the right keys to make calls. As far as Holo Fuel, there's a bunch of things. We intend to enable some secondary authentication, multi-sig kind of properties. There's also, every Holo Fuel transaction is countersigned. It is not just a signed by the sender kind of thing. It's actually signed by the sender and receiver, which creates accountability on both parties. So if a token in blockchain land were to be sent to me, I can claim I know nothing about that. I just appeared in my wallet. You can't make that same claim in Holo Fuel. You were party to accepting that transaction, and therefore, if something was stolen or hacked, you actually know who received it. You can chase down a line of accountability there in a way that you can't in blockchain land. And I say who, that doesn't necessarily mean a lot of KYC has been done on every party, but there are levels of KYC on some of the parties, the hosts and the app providers and that kind of stuff. And generally speaking, I believe we still are requiring an email for setting up. So at least there's some barriers for just manufacturing accounts. But then this is also bringing up things like the Ledger thing that has recently, that they're trying to, key management is hard. So Ledger is trying to set up something where you could choose an option to shard your keys to 3 providers that they have selected, and you would need 2 of the 3 of them to reproduce your keys, essentially, to restore your wallet and its contents. we have key management also that right now is built and beginning to be tested. It's called Deep Key. But in this scenario, we let you set your key requirements as well as who the parties are. So it's set up for M of N countersigning. So you could choose 3 of 5 of your friends or 5 of 7 of your friends or something like that. You get to configure how you want your keys to be able to be managed. And this doesn't shard the keys to your whole wallet and allow them to take control of all of your keys, but it does manage, it allows you to revoke or to replace existing keys. So if your phone got stolen and it had some keys on it, you could actually replace the keys there using Deep Key and whatever structure you set up for the replacement. So anyway, those are steps that we're taking to try to help with key management actually being something humans can handle.
There is going to be a lot documented about this. There are going to be blog posts shared about this. There are going to be explainers walking people through all of this, because I know what Arthur just walked everybody through quickly in his answer there. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to digest. So look for some things coming out in the coming months. I mean, we just got through a pretty important milestone, I understand, the last couple of days on the Deep Key work, which is exactly, it's one big step in this process of what's coming. So as soon as it's ready for prime time, you'll see more.
Yep. Gosh. Okay. I'm trying to think through how to. Okay, so Mario, just a quick check. Are there any questions you really want to make sure we've answered? Because I think we're going to end up about 15 short or something like that, looking at 10 short, looking at time. We'll just keep going through. Oh, you're on mute, Mary.
I'd like to get to 17.
Yeah, let's just jump in on some of the event questions. We'll just go through them real quick, and then I'll try to.
Yep.
Keep it
okay.
short.
Okay. So there was one. There's just a quick question around the least authority audit. There was an issue around up-to-date design specification, which was resolved, and the measures being put in place to ensure the auditing of the Holo network. There are up-to-date documentation for auditors to assess the system as a whole.
Yeah, we have spec documents and whatnot for most of the architecture work that's been done for Holo that will be provided. Some of it may need to be refined, updated, or whatnot in advance of the reviews. But at the same time, there's really it's not too big of a deal for us to end up in a situation where somebody says the worst thing that you need to do for security is to write some words on a piece of paper. So we were pretty happy about that result for that audit for Holochain. And but yes, we're doing documentation as we go.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And onto some event stuff. So someone was asking about events in Italy. We just say, look, firstly, we'll definitely go where there's interest. Also, reach out if you're in Italy and you would like to get something moving. A lot of events start. And activity starts because somebody just begins and their interest grows. And so
right.
Please just get started. And if you want to recommend something, get in touch with someone in the team. Mary, the recent dev training. So what were the takeaways with the online dev training versus the in-person dev training that was done previously? And based on that, what kind of training do we think is going to be more effective in reaching a large pool of devs in the future?
Right. Well, the reason you do in-person, in real life training is because the educators actually need to be rapidly iterating on the materials and the way to deliver the materials in order for learners to learn. That's the biggest reason. And is it a great way for learners to learn? Sure. if you have all that time to sit down over a long period of time to do it in an intensive way, absolutely, it's perfect. It's wonderful, in fact, but not everybody's life is conducive to that sort of learning. So we know that we have to get our training materials actually offered out in a lot of different ways. Some of them are going to be online intensive, but we really need to also get to self-paced and online offerings that really work for people where they are in the way that they need it. So this is an evolving thing. We'll be offering all of these kinds of trainings over time.
Awesome. Okay, and how did East Denver go? And tell me about some other events that you're doing or going to planning.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that was really great about ETH Denver is distinct from the education stuff that I was just talking about. ETH Denver events, there were two kinds of events that we did. One was a build event and one was a social community event, those were the two types. We did several of them. And we learned a lot about our build events, because one of the things is that Holochain has changed a lot since we were doing a lot of hackathons in the past. Hackathons are build events. These were intense, short build events, because guess what? You can build things faster now, more easily now. Some of the tooling is a lot better than it was, but that doesn't mean people don't have to go through some learnings. And some of it you learn by actually just using distributed Holochain applications. And some of it you learn by using the rapid application development tools. And some of it you learn by digging in and learning how to code an app. So we kind of learned a lot quickly in those live sessions about how people learn during build events. And that was super great. We're getting ready to launch a series of online events that kind of were created out of the learnings from that. We also did some great community events. We love community events. We love what gets generated in our team, but also in the big mix of what it is that people are seeing and doing and wanting in the world. And it connects us with our purpose and why we need to keep bringing this to the world. And so that was great. I mean, if you want to say something more on the community events, I think there's so much value there. Anyway, I'll leave it to you.
Actually, I wanted to say something about the build event really briefly, because it was really fun to see people coming in with kind of a blockchain mindset sort of be blown away, because they didn't necessarily know much about Holochain. And so, when you start with the hosted newsfeed app, where right from your phone, you can be using a Twitter-like app without having to worry about wallets and gas fees and all that kind of stuff. And then we went to a launcher-based app where you could see real-time interactions happening, where with our copy that's on the projector and you move something on your screen and boom, it's updated over on ours, and seeing real-time kind of interactions also kind of blew people away. And then scaffolding an Instagram-like app with picture sharing, where you didn't need to cobble together something to post, store data on IPFS or off-chain or, anything like that. And being able to cobble that together being able to scaffold that in 20 to 30 minutes and have a fully functioning app where as soon as you just installed it on your system, you were seeing your pictures get posted up on the, again, on our instance on the projector. No complicated deployment to the network or anything like that. Just whoever's running the app is running the app and their peers. And anyway, it was just fun to sort of watch these little kind of, that people went through. And yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Okay. So congrats on milestones. This next one, I may as well read out the congratulations because it's always nice to see. As a result, the team has been selected to build a Holochain app to facilitate the coordination of the 2023 DWeb event. During the event, what can be expected of the team in terms of strategies to demonstrate the viability of the Holochain network to other participants at the event?
So really briefly, DWeb Camp is an event that was organized by the Internet Archive for decentralized web stuff, and they're structuring the event in an interesting way this year, where they're sort of having business as usual for the first couple of days, and then they're doing an event they're calling Tomorrow, where they're going to flip a big switch and turn off the internet And we still will have all of the tools to coordinate, but the tools that can run in a local context or offline context or things like that. And that's one of those strengths I mentioned earlier about Holochain, is that local first, asynchronous, offline first kind of capability. And so being able to run local first means both local to your device only, but it also means local to your LAN. So we can have a local area Wi-Fi network without an internet connection, and everybody can still be connecting with each other. So the third day of the DWeb camp is going to be basically it's going to be an open space style event where people propose sessions and schedule them and all that kind of stuff. And all that's going to be being done through a Holochain app. But there are a lot of other things that we are highlighting at that event. So not only are we kind of integrated into the structure of the event, but we have like we space type stuff for group forming and governance tools and collaboration tools, and Newsfeed will be updated to running on Holochain beta and demonstrable on the Holo network, and Acorn for project management, and maybe some HREA, the accounting based tools. We know that Neighborhoods group is coming and they're going to have things to demo. There's things for like NFT storage on chain and Ethereum virtual machine integration and cross chain integration and connection. I mean, there's a number of different things that groups are going to be demonstrating there connected to Holochain. A lot of fun stuff, because Holochain finally is a place where we're being able to build all this fun stuff.
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. Neighborhoods they've got doing some really exciting liquidity work. Before I go into the next question, while DWeb's a focus, I just wanted to shout out that Volla, which is a privacy-first phone in Germany, just had their community days on the weekend, and we were represented there with a couple of Holochain engineers. Volla is really, really interesting, and they've got this idea of convergence essentially between like a Raspberry Pi and a phone, where you would want all of your devices to be connected, and your devices like your laptop, your computer screen are essentially like just windows into the same data. And at the moment, you can only do that with big tech. And the engineers were able, I think, like almost able to get Holochain launcher and conductor running on Ubuntu Touch, and they built a app in a day with file storage and user profiles and the same. Like even the building, the majority of that was front end. So the actual Holochain component of this application that had got quite a profound impact on the people in the group, as Art mentioned earlier, was not a heavy lift. The heavy lift was in the UI and the design. But then there were retailers of the Volla phone from around the world that were also seeing this, and you could see the penny starting to drop for people in what's truly like, around the corner in terms of peer-to-peer network interactions, the local first, like Art had been describing, the ability to be able to connect your devices without having going through big tech. And so even though that doesn't have quite the stature of the DWeb camp, I thought really important, VOLLA, Volla, and I'll put the link in. Yeah, with DWeb, just really very aligned community, very, very interesting product. Also, it's great that they're focused on hardware, just like we also made a focus on hardware with the Holoports, and really exciting to see that Holochain can shift the perception of what is happening in peer-to-peer networks or what's possible in aligned community. So I wanted to just shout out that as well. Okay, so go on. Got a couple more questions. Let's take there's 3-4 questions around AI that we can pick up. I think is good to finish off. So how do we plan to utilize AI, machine learning, or artificial intelligence and machine learning with Holochain and Holo, especially as the AI models become more distributed over time? So Art, you want to up that one?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what it's taken to build these large language models with hundreds of billions of parameters and such like that has been massive centralized hardware data center kind of stuff. But that landscape is shifting. First of all, there's smaller model. There's models being released with that are already parameterized, where you've already got the weights and everything set on those models, as the sort of open sourcing of AI happens, there's it requires less and less hardware to be able to use, because you don't have to do all of the training, but also even the training sets. There's the opening of training sets and things like that are definitely shifting the landscape. But I think one of the key things about using AI with Holochain is the possibility of personalization. So not only the personalization through the agent-centric data and training of it on your own data, but also the local possession of that data, because there are groups that are saying, we'll let you customize things, but you have to send them all of your data to do that, right? And that's sort of an extension of that surveillance culture that is powering big tech today. And the idea that you can just be running this locally and be keeping all of your data locally, including your own trained up data sets, is good. But I also want to point out that there's a lot of hype about AI, but there's also some warnings coming. There's like Tristan Harris, who was a part of the social media dilemma that came out on Netflix, recently put out an AI dilemma interview where they presented a bunch of things on stage, and there's some warnings about appropriate use of AI, in particular some of the things that drive it in terms of profit-driven, centralized corporate AI that Holochain may also be able to alter the dynamics of, in not having to be so profit-driven and extractive in approach. We actually, you mentioned DWeb. One of the sponsors of DWeb is OpenAI, and we expect to be having a lot of these kinds of dialogues coming up at OpenAI. And I want to say that one of the things that matters about technology tools, right? We sometimes use this metaphor of a hammer. Like a hammer as a tool can be used to build things, but it can also be used to, smack somebody in the head. It matters who wields the hammer. And so if you are able to run that infrastructure yourself, versus if this is at the level like that currently has gone into it, of like that only big tech and state level actors can afford to train up these things, if they're the only ones wielding a hammer, what does it get used for? And so those are some of the questions I think that become very relevant around this. I also want to mention that Matthew Schutte went to the TinyML, the tiny machine learning conference, and they're thinking very differently about this than like the big AI type stuff. And I think it's actually much more in accord with the way we approach things, in terms of it's more about like assembling microservices, smaller things that are trained to do little parts of it, intelligently, that you can then connect together in different ways, instead of sort of like trying to make the ultimate general intelligence. You can actually have very specific targeted things.
Yeah, just to kind of follow there. So at DWeb, which is the event that we're going to, that we're a sponsor for, this is a really interesting opportunity to be able to sit down with people, because this is a small conference in the Redwoods, where we're going to have the opportunity to be looking deeply at some of the concerns, the questions. People will be there that are on all sides of these issues. And I think for Holochain especially, this is a wonderful time for us to sort of go deep. Arthur has some deep experience with, artificial intelligence as his background, but really what we choose to focus on is the social coherent side instead of the artificial side. And so how do we have technology actually be used for that and create the world we want to live in as human beings? And so I just really want to land that. We're going to DWeb. We will be there with folks from OpenAI, and we'll be in conversations with folks, but we're bringing a lot of what our commitments are and our intentions are for how these things can be used in a distributed, ethical way. And so that's just where we are in the conversation. I think it's important to note.
Yep, completely agree. I think that's probably it there. I mean, there was a final question about whether we're pursuing any AI related projects we can talk about. Art, was there anything from you?
Well, I just want to say more of them have been popping up. I mean, we are now in dialogue. Like I went to an event at the Internet Archive with OpenAI and Huggable and now I'm forgetting the names of some of the other groups, but there were like 4 different AI groups that were there, and there is a lot more interest in kind of the open source and personalization type things, and people are looking for the right platforms for that, because even just the part about having local secure encrypted storage, having ways of getting through the NATs and firewalls, having the peer-to-peer network functioning itself is even one of the strengths that Holochain provides people who are looking for something like that. So there are some groups starting to explore it, but there's nothing that I've seen where people are actually training data on Holochain yet.
Yeah. Likewise, and there I see a lot of interest in, and it often happens, and I guess for, again, anyone who's tuned in for the last hour and potentially is tuned into previous AMAs, you can just the breadth of both thinking and application is phenomenal in terms of what we're creating. So this AI thread, that my experience outside what Art and Mary shared, is there's quite a lot of interest in people who are beginning to point towards more decentralized sort of infrastructure solutions for like hosting, for training, for operating AI models, and yeah, I think that it's one where we're treading. It's one where we're treading cautiously, but you can definitely see people pointing towards the direction of Holochain style solutions. Yep, Art.
Yeah, I want to add to that and actually say, Holochain has always been meant to be a broader platform than just Holo's hosting agenda. And Holo has been basically our first enterprise client, and therefore is paying for and steering a lot of the direction and requirements of Holochain in terms of the sequencing and prioritization of some of the features. But we are starting to see more projects with that kind of potential and scale, in the IoT space, in the supply chain accounting space with the HREA and different things like that. None of these are stabilized enough that they're ready to announce or anything, but we're starting to see these pulls emerge for projects that would be as big or bigger enterprise customers for Holochain than the Holo hosting network is. So that's good. That's actually speaking to a diversifying of the product maturity and use.
Great. Mary, I'm not sure if you're trying to say something or not.
No, I think we're up to time, aren't we?
Exactly. I was going to say, is there any final question that anyone really would like to answer? Otherwise, I'll wrap up.
I just want to say there's a lot of other questions here that are good and that we'd like to get to. So maybe we can fit those in one of the next AMAs, because there were a lot of, we sorted them a little bit by topic, and we didn't get to some of the topics that were asked about. So thanks everybody for asking questions.
Yeah, completely agree. Actually, I realized we were going to do the developer focused AMA, and we do have 11 questions on Holochain development and Holochain 0.2.0. So that might be a good starting point. Agreed. Okay. Well, yes. So thanks for everyone. Like, definitely check out the upcoming DWeb agenda, and yeah, that should be very exciting. Definitely, if you're interested, you can
dwebcamp.org.
DWebCamp. Yep.
But
yeah. Oh, yeah. If you'd like to register, if registration's still open. Okay, super. Yeah, definitely. If you're in the Bay Area or want to travel, I think that should be, well, Mary and Art are just highlighting why it should be such an interesting experience this year, whether it's fundamentally having a new experience with technology on the days where the internet is down, or whether we're looking at those conversations about the future of AI and species, and that should be fantastic. Check out the Vola community days if you're interested in the demo there and starting to look at privacy first mobile phone and how Holochain might be able to enable sync and backup and power applications. Visit a conference that Mary's speaking at in June, July, and check out a lot of the demos that I guess if they're going to be at DWeb will also come in the next few weeks.
I think there's even a game hack last night online with about 20 people, and yeah,
40,
I think it was 45.
45 people are there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things happening right now.
Yeah, I think we're going to have some tickets available for the Berlin conference too, for anybody that's in Germany or in the area. I don't have all the details on that, but I know we have some tickets for that to give away. So.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, really, the game hacks really interesting. They're really, really interesting, and possibly participating at a gaming event as like community-powered gaming event coming up in a couple of weeks. Just a lot of foundational pieces, and as Art mentioned, to everyone who's been building, everyone who's been hosting, and that for the Alpha program, people who've been sponsoring events, and people joining developer trainings, and the whole team continuing to build this amazing technology. So a big thank you to everyone, and we're enjoying seeing you out and about this year. We're enjoying seeing what people are building, and it's looking forward to a really great next 3-4 months that we've outlined. And we should be seeing you shortly for the next developer AMA. So yeah, thanks Art, thanks Mary, and see you all soon.
Ciao.